Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Out of the Woods Growing Income from Your Forest. My name is Lindsay Kazarek, and I will be your host. I am joined by Casey Withers. He will be my co-host, helping out on tech. And this evening, we are joined by the one and only Annie Humes. Annie is a management and marketing professional with a focus on hospitality and food businesses, with a lifelong passion for sustainable and meaningful food systems and generally falling in love with things that people make. Annie's approach to her work is grounded in meeting individuals, organizations, and communities where they are and moving towards growth in a sustainable, integrated, context-informed manner. During our presentation this evening, we will have the chat and the Q&A open. So please feel free to add your comments to the discussion or any questions that you may have as they arise into those locations. And we will have our Q&A at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Annie.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Can you hear me okay?
You're perfect.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone at Future Generations for having me on this evening. I'm really excited to be here and honored to be asked to speak in this series. So, as Lindsay said, I'm Annie Humes, and I'm here to talk about growing where you're planted, which I'm gonna spend this evening largely inside of an extended analogy. So I wanted to start out with this first image here, just to kind of set the tone for what I mean when I say grow where you're planted. I think personally, these pictures here on the first slide are kind of where my mind goes when I say that. And none of those are, I think, kind of the first thing that folks think of when they think of growing something. But all three of those pictures, including the swamp trees, tupelo trees, which are one of my favorite things in the world because they are just clearly meeting the circumstances that they have found around them. And I think it doesn't matter where you're planted, and whether that's you as an individual, your business, your community, your organization. I want to start off by setting the tone of all three of these lovely living things on the pictures here at the beginning are growing where they're planted. So to introduce myself a little bit, the introduction that Lindsay gave included references to this. So, hi, I'm Annie. I live here in Pendleton County, West Virginia, and I have a couple of different roles that I play on a regular basis. So, as Lindsay said, I am a small business owner. I work as kind of a coach and a consultant to small businesses and organizations through my business, Workman Works. Our tagline is helping things work. And there's a really special place in my heart for working with people who are in either a growth moment or in envisioning moment where they're taking something that's been in the realm of dreams and they're taking it into reality. So I work one-on-one with small businesses throughout the region. I've had some incredible experiences working with people, taking those kinds of moments of I'm going to jump off the cliff and get into this activity, into this business, into this service that I'm going to provide, and helping to move them through those moments. I also run the Farmers Market here in Franklin, West Virginia. It's a seasonal market that's open from June through early September every year. It's a wonderful community space. It's a nonprofit organization that truly is really oriented towards folks who are in situations not unlike what I was just saying, where there's a growth moment, there's an experiment that they want to take to the next level, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then thirdly, here, I recently have stepped into the role of the Convention and Visitors Bureau Director for our county. Pendleton Rocks is this tagline. It's a beautiful picture of Seneca Rocks there above it. And that is the tourism office that serves our county and the town of Franklin. And again, is a really people-oriented space that I enjoy immensely. So I think if you are a small business person, you probably look a lot like me often. If you get this reference, you know the same childhood book that I do. I definitely wear a lot of hats, and I think that owning that has been a challenging but rewarding thing over the course of my journey as an individual and as a working professional. And I think that's kind of part of why I like to talk about things in the extended analogy that those trees were the breadcrumbs of at the beginning here. So, the first thing that I kind of want to frame here is that the kind of work that I do in all of the spaces that I work is typically with people who are at a moment where they're making a decision. And so I found this meme. I love this meme. I've had the internet share it with me many times over the last few years. Where do I go from here? And I like it because it really is, it helps you, it helps me really frame what has led up to the moment that you're in. And that could be, you're thinking about starting a new business. You could have an existing business and you're thinking about starting a new line of products, or hiring an employee for the first time, or growing into a new market. It doesn't matter what moment of what's next you're in. This is the path that every single person, no matter what course they're taking, really could draw for themselves. And I really love that because it really is a matter of taking the decisions that you're making about your business, your food business, your agroforestry business, your tourism business, and putting it into the context of you as a person who has gotten here through whatever path you've gone through. And that path into the future is not singular, nor has the path that you got to this moment through. Sorry, technical issue with my note thing on the side of the computer. So in my experience, there are often a lot of sources of advice that we all have access to. And that could be any number of resources. That could be what you've researched online. That could be a course that you took several years ago. It could be any number of things. And I think what I like to think about when approaching a conversation with whether it's a business owner or an organization is the most of us are able to access something that looks like this diagram pretty quickly and easily as we start to get into whatever field of work or production that we're doing. This is technically how a plant grows. You have all the different little inputs there. Technically, this is correct. Technically, this is what goes into a plant growing. If you are a teacher, this model is not, it's gonna connect with any student you have. It's gonna connect with someone who is in a very different environment than you are. It's easy to teach this. It's pretty much true no matter where you are or when you are. It could even happen in outer space. I like to think of things in a vacuum. This version of a plant growing could happen in a vacuum. But what's missing from it? And this is what I like to do when I approach the work that I'm doing, which is definitely inclusive of everything that was in that first picture, but is context specific. You see this lovely tree here. The plant that's kind of the focus of this image happens to be in a place where there are rabbits, happens to be in a place where there's a certain type of soil, not just all the things that are always in a soil. There's a lot more complexity here, and there are things going on here that change over time, right? A tree that lives near a woodlot where there's a lot of wood rotting is going to be affected by that ongoing decomposition process that goes on for years. And that's going to be different than the tree a few acres away that does not have that as its context. It also is not a closed system. You see the little birds coming in from outside. Right now there are geese. Maybe next year there will be a bunch of starlings in the area. It has inputs coming in. So this is the extended analogy that I wanted to frame here at the beginning, because when it comes to small business, whether it is a food business or really any kind of small business, you often get to a moment where you have mastered that more simplistic vision of where and what your business is capable of. You know what your inputs are, you know what you're selling. But to me, one of the key processes that you can go through no matter what business you have is to take that simple picture and fill in all that complex detail. If you feel strongly that you've got those basics mastered, it's time to start drawing that bigger picture of what your business is going to be. And since we are not trees or tomato plants, I don't know what that plant is on the left, but we're people. And so all of this difference in understandings of inputs, understandings of the environment that we are growing our work and our business in, all those different elements that are complex and changing over time are the human landscape and the social landscape around us as we're growing. So some examples of that, I think, in my experience, I've worked in food businesses, both in urban and rural environments. In very high volume, high intensity environments. I worked as a cheesemonger in New York City in my 20s. I've worked in local food systems here in West Virginia for the entire time that I've lived here, one way or the other. And I think that one of the biggest things is doing that work of having having curiosity kind of take the front seat when you are figuring out what that bigger, more complex picture of where you're growing is. So that can be, yeah, who's in your ecosystem. So that can include things like formal resource providers, folks like the extension agencies that service your area, small business association resources. Many areas have other types of support resources that help with you know, working through your business plan, getting initial funding for your business. In our area, the Woodlands Development and Lending Group does a ton of work to support people. Depending on what area you're in, there are always going to be formal resources available to you. There are also the other people who are doing business that is similar to yours. You know, you may not necessarily think of talking to the person who is, by some definitions, a competitor when you begin doing something new, or if there's somebody who's established. You might benefit from actually speaking with those people, and connecting with them, because in many ways they're going to have as much in common with you as anyone will. One of my favorite examples of that is the wine industry, actually, in Oregon. If you're not into wine, most famous area for wine growing in the United States is California. And for a long time, there was no wine vineyards. There you go. Vineyards or winemaking really going on in the state of Oregon. But over the course of the last 30 to 40 years, that state has developed a wine industry. And those people in competing businesses ate dinner together once a month for over a decade while that group of people's industry were growing. People who directly competed with one another. And if you go, I couldn't find the photo, but I have this beautiful photo of about 40 people all sitting outside the Italian restaurant where the whole industry would come together. And I know a lot of the folks in the syrup production industry that have been involved in Future Generations work have a similar kind of outlook in terms of you are part of a community of makers. And I would never, it doesn't matter what you're doing. I think that is one of the most valuable things. And especially when you're new in a line of work, it's easy to not feel like that's somewhere to go. And so I think that's something that I really would encourage anyone and everyone to make sure they're taking advantage of and taking the time for as they're developing whatever work they're doing. Logistical partners, potential B2Bs, that's business to business. Networking into those folks who have related interests, everyone from retailers to restaurants to, you know, if you're making a food product, even if you don't think where you are right now is going to be what they're going to need. Get to know those people. Get to know the person who is running the restaurant that is the one that everyone goes to. Get curious about what their business is, even if it's not a connection that's going to work for what you're making at the volume you're making or the style that you're making right now. The more you know about the lay of the land when it comes to potential sales outlets, the better off you are as you continue to evolve what you're doing. Um, Logistical partners, I am personally a huge nerd for understanding distribution. I think there is never going to be a time where it's not useful to understand how the products that people around you are buying get to them. And if you have a locally owned shop, get curious with that shop owner. Ask them how they're making their decisions about where they're buying things. And that could be anything from a gas station to a grocery store. Obviously, if you live in an area that is as remote as our area here in Pendleton is, you don't have as many of the kind of large scale distribution networks servicing you, and the creativity that goes into how business owners and retailers make make things appear on the shelves in more remote areas is incredible. But that same type of thing happens everywhere, especially in small family-run businesses, locally owned shops. There is a huge amount of creativity in the way people source, and it's an area where the more you are curious, the more you will understand where you maybe could go in the future. Um, and obviously, your customers. I think customers are what everyone knows. That's part of that simpler diagram of, what are the things you need? You need somebody to sell it to. But you're going to find out every single day that you're talking to a customer what makes them your customer. And that's where I love this idea of champions. We have a couple of phenomenal champions around local food in our community. They're the people who are more than customers. They are excited to the point of being unpaid advertisers for you. Basically, they are your marketing department before you can afford a marketing department. And I think being grateful for that, being hospitable and engaging in all of the ways that you learn as you're learning to sell a product, whether that's to business owners or directly to customers. Getting curious about what motivates those people is a huge benefit to you, because it will help you to understand where you're connecting. That human connection really is the currency that gives you a insight into where you're going to end up growing. So that's all really, I think it's almost too simple to say, like, it feels almost too simple to just say, be curious. But really, if you keep going back to that with all of the people who you are touching throughout your work in your business, that is something that will serve you over time. The other side of my apology for curiosity is getting curious about what's happening that has nothing to do with you. So with any business, especially if it's a business that is new and there's nobody doing a business like yours in the area, or maybe you're a person who is new to an area and you're opening a business for the first time, or you're starting a farm-based business in an area where you've recently purchased land, um, or even you've been in the place that you've been for your whole life and you're starting to do business in an area where you've never done it before. Um, I think, again, get curious. What is already happening around you? Uh, where are the people who are successful already? Maybe that's a success that really doesn't have a lot to do with what your business is going to do, but you can get curious about those people who have success. Maybe that's somebody who's got the new hit shop on Main Street, or maybe that's the person who's got the diner that's been in business for 60 years. Get curious, get to know the people who are doing those successful things around you. Um, Understand what other people value and prioritize. Um, I think uh, people say, you know, people say you don't want to take coals to Newcastle. Um, what people are prioritizing, maybe within the industry where you're working, maybe people are really excited about local food and they're interested in doing that kind of, in growing those types of businesses. But maybe you live in a place where that's not really a priority right now, but people are really into, I don't know, uh, classic cars. Where are the places that your community gets excited? Where are the places where people are getting people together? Events are happening, social groups are gathering around things. Get curious about the things that matter in your community. Um, the other the other thing that I think, and this is something that for me has been a huge part of having been a transplant into a small community, is taking time to step back and see what already works really well. Because every community's landscape of get it done is different. Um, in some places, you've got really strong, businesses that kind of lead the way on things you wouldn't expect. Um, like, for example, we have an auto dealership in our county that is a boon supporter of all sorts of social enterprises. We have, we have folks who are growing at the same time as the projects that I'm working on are growing, and knowing where they are and what challenges they're facing versus the folks who are already established in how they support the community around them. That curiosity is really, I think, to me, the core of what can help to guide the bigger picture of your decisions as you move forward with a growth step in your business or your organization. So that's a lot of things. And if you're in the business of doing something like making a retail product, running a restaurant, um, running a farm-based business that's creating a product that gets sold wholesale, all of those things that I just said are not what you are spending all of your time doing. A lot of people have the experience of getting into a business plan, doing that work when they are in the envisioning process. I encourage you, if you're in that kind of moment, add all this stuff to the list of what you're doing when you are when you are when you're building your plans. The thing that's way harder is once you're in that work, to stay in this curiosity space. Um, it's so easy, especially if you are on a, if you have a land-based business and you could easily just stay on your, stay on your property doing your thing, uh, 365 days a year, except for maybe you go into town for Christmas. It's so easy to not have time for this piece of what I think really can help to shape over time what you're doing. Um, that sense of place, not just the land that you're on, but the sense of place that is bigger than that, that is where you sit within your community and the economy. That is worthy of your attention on an ongoing basis as you continue your work, no matter if your business has been open for a year or 30 years or 100 years. Taking the time to step back, find opportunities to get curious about these kinds of things, it will always benefit your decision-making processes as you continue to grow. Okay, so story time. I think I saw a note come through on the chat, but I can't see the whole thing. So a couple of examples of this for me. So Pendleton County, where I live, has had the farmers market that I helped to run for, this will be our 12th season that we just kicked off this year. And way before that farmers market ever happened, this has been an agricultural community for 200 plus years. And so it's uh, it's the first story that I kind of want to speak to is, I think, one of these moments that I keep pointing to and keep pointing to and keep pointing to, which is the woman in this picture surrounded by beautiful baked goods. She is native of our area. She's been doing a lot of different kinds of work for a long time. And about a year and a half ago, she took something that was a personal passion, which was bread baking, and began to experiment with having it be something that is bigger than just baking for friends and family. So Betty's Backroad Bakery came to the farmers market last spring for the very first time. It was her first move into in-person retail. And over the course of last summer, she developed an incredible following of people throughout our community. Our farmers market usually sees about 150 to 200 people every weekend. And so that was her first move, was she grew into, I'm going to be ready to be at a farmer's market for 13 weeks for 3 hours on Saturday. And then September came, farmer's market closed for the season. And over the course of the winter, she has maintained a very steady business through online pre-ordering. And most of that business is from the people who she connect. Well, I won't speak to most. A lot of that business is from the people who she was able to connect with in person at the farmers market. And so this year she's back in action again. And we have another business who is hoping to kind of follow a similar model. So also doing baked goods, also hoping to be able to do a pre-order process online, but who is there with us to take that opportunity for connection that the farmers market provides. So our farmers market over time has been a lot of different things, but that value that it has is the opportunity it provides to folks at that early development stage to come and be in person with customers. The second picture there, the beautiful mural on the wall there, and I didn't have space on this page to really take all of my many other pictures, is a very recent, very exciting development in our community that's called the Courtyard Kitchen. So John and Michelle Connor are a couple who own a property that's about a block and a half from the farmers market. It's right in our downtown here in Franklin. And over the course of the last 2.5 years, they have been working on a variety of different ways for that building to, it's a beautiful historic building with a bunch of different pieces to it, kind of different types of retail spaces, working on ways for that space to serve in a contextually appropriate way for our community. And so the Courtyard Kitchen is a pretty unusual business. And when they first told me about it, I said, wow, that is so cool. I have no idea if it's going to work. And what it is basically a stationary food truck that they have different folks invited into every week. We've had an incredible lineup of people coming through our community, serving food on the weekends during kind of the highest, go out to eat days of the week every week. And what it is doing is giving another moment that meets the need of the people around us. So some of the people who have come into that space are already professional chefs, professional food folks, and this is an opportunity for them to increase their human connection with the community around them. And other people have come into that space who have never had the opportunity to cook in a commercial kitchen before, but who are excellent cooks. They're interested in learning and growing. And so that Courtyard Kitchen space has been built around a process that is grounded in being curious about what people need. That's where it started. And so far it's been doing a profoundly successful job of giving opportunity for that human connection that every small business benefits from. And the last thing I've got on this slide here, and I'm going to speed through to the last slide in the deck here in a minute, is a picture of myself and our extension agent, as well as Jeff Munn, who is a local distiller who has a very kind of artisanal distillery on his homestead. And we are at an agritourism conference. And so this is where that third piece of my Venn diagram comes in, which is tourism. And what I kind of want to say broadly is tourism is where we are right now in this community where I live. Tourism is an emergent opportunity. Over the course of the last decade or so, it has kind of shown itself to be a growing industry in our county. And I think if you had spoken to the same people who are at the farmers market today or in the local grocery store even today, a decade ago, they would not have really connected those food business related spaces to the tourism industry. But it has become very much an area where there is an emerging opportunity, because while most of the people who come to our area whatever the big tourist attraction is in your area. Just imagine, whether it's a lake or a beach or whatever. We have rock climbing. We have Spruce Knob, which is the highest point in the state. We have had places that people come for tourism activities, leisure activities, vacation for forever here. But the connection between that activity and the agricultural activities of our community is a very new overlap. So that picture is of the three of us. We had gone over to a conference all about the connection between tourism and agriculture, agritourism, as you probably already know, that's the word for it. And that is not, I think, ever what I thought I was going to be focusing my energy and time on when I started to work in the farmers market. And when I first got into the conversations here in this same community 3 or 4 years ago about tourism, the farm stuff wasn't really part of that conversation either. And so what what I've got here on the last slide is a plug, but it is an example of what we are doing right now in that emergent space, in that space where there is support being made available for people who are interested in agritourism. There is evidently interest in agritourism. The Mountain State Maple Days program events that happen in February and March have been a success statewide. And over the course of the last, 5 to 10 years, a broad swath of businesses that were not thinking they would become destination locations for people who were on vacation. They thought that they were going to have a farm or a ranch or what have you, are over time developing the skills and developing the tools to meet that emergent interest in agritourism. And this is the map that if you're in our area, you're going to be able to get your hands on it starting this weekend. For June 28th, we are having our very first farm crawl here in Pendleton County. And each of the locations that are on that map there represent a business that has decided to be curious about the way that their business can benefit from the interest in agriculture from people who are vacationing in our area. And I have up here at the top, what is your definition of success? And I said that here with this because there are a handful of businesses on this farm crawl map here. And I think what has been incredible, and if you're in the area, please come out and meet each of those humans, is that each of these places, the Mountain Cajun Getaway, Swilled Dog Spirits, Dry Run Spirits, OMG Acres, and Blackthorn Lavender, and each of those businesses has their own definition of success. And I think that they sit with that definition of success so comfortably, and continue to grow in innovative ways because they've continued to have curiosity and interest in how what they do connects with the people around them, and not just in the creation of the products that they have as the anchor points of their business. So that curiosity is, I think, really what I'd like to have everyone take away from this talk today. That's all I got, Lindsay. Thank you all so much. I think there's time for questions.
Thank you so much, Annie. That was a phenomenal, phenomenal presentation. Looking here, Melanie says thank you.
You're welcome, Melanie.
Do not have any questions in the Q&A. We'll give folks a chance. I did have a question, so I can go ahead and start that off. So whenever, if you would want to go back to your slide that had your ecosystem and existing energy.
This one?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you had spoken to the point that you had started having these conversations when you had came into the community. Could you talk a little bit about how you started those conversations yourself and maybe what that looked like for folks who haven't maybe done that themselves?
Sure. Well, I think finding places where I could volunteer when I started working with the farmers market, I just started volunteering. I started shopping, and then I started shopping slowly and lingeringly. And then I started volunteering. And I think one of the moments that I always think of in terms of that, how and where did that happen? Was with the gentleman who's our beef producer who sells at the farmers market every summer. Um, it was actually after the farmers market season, and was uh, I was going to purchase some meat from him off of his farm, and when I went, um, I I think I can't even remember what I was getting, a couple of steaks. We were having dinner that weekend with some guests. And when I stopped in, I ended up staying for about an hour and having a really lengthy conversation about beekeeping and capturing native wild swarming bees. Um, and I have this kind of core memory of that moment being that I had gone there thinking it would take me about 10 minutes. Um, and realizing about 10 minutes into it, when we were still definitely talking about bees, that this was going to take longer than that. And I think, especially in some of the more rural communities, like the one that we live in here in Pendleton, in communities with an aging population, and especially in rural communities, there is going to be a whole world of what you didn't realize you were going to be finding out behind every person that you're talking to. And so to me, that, in that moment, I made the decision to actively listen, rather than stay in my sense of, okay, I thought this was going to take 10 minutes. Um, and decided that I was going to learn about bees today. And then over the course of the last, I don't know when that happened, 3 years ago, I have had more information about bees when I've talked to beekeepers than I would have had before that. So, um, yeah, I think that kind of, uh, when life gives you the opportunity for a side quest or a rabbit hole, um, take it more often than not if it is going to deepen your connection with the people who are in the community around you.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Annie. Um, so it does not look like we have had any other questions. Yeah, nothing has come in. So looks like you have done a fantastic job presenting. Thank you so much, Casey, for launching the exit poll. Um, Next month in July, Heather Harper from the Appalachia team here at the university will be presenting on our Reconnecting Heroes programming, and what that means for veterans in agriculture, and how you could get involved with that if you are a veteran or if you know someone who is a veteran. So hopefully we will see you here back on July 17th at 7 p.m. I want to thank everyone, especially Annie, for being here with us tonight. And everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Oh, Annie, we do have one more question. It just came in.
Oh, sure.
What advice do you have for someone who has never interacted with customers and is worried no one will like their product?
Well, the best advice if your product is edible, have samples and hand it to them before as soon as they show up. I think that is my absolute number one advice. If you have an edible product and a venue where it's appropriate, giving people something to taste as the way you introduce them to what you're doing. For one, it you're giving them something right away. Um, and uh, that is always a winner. Uh, and it also gives you the opportunity to see that product uh, interact with the person right there in the moment. Um, I think that that is the best advice I can give. I also sincerely believe that there for every flavor um, or style of product that there is in this world, there is somebody out there who's going to love it. Um, there was a gentleman who ate. I worked at a sandwich shop in college, and he ate a peanut butter hummus and pickle sandwich on a cinnamon raisin bagel every single day. He worked at the hospital next to my college, and uh, I would love to think that somewhere in the world there was a person who had made that sandwich and said, "I want to sell this sandwich," and and he exists out there for them. Um, but I think that get it into their hands, get it in, let them try it, the product speak for itself, and then pay attention, get curious about the ways people do respond.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Annie.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you. And again, I hope everyone has a great evening, and we will be back here again on July 17th at 7 p.m.